It's now recording.
Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm just going to grab my PowerPoint and we'll get started. Okay. Does
Now I
everyone, you see it now?
yes.
Excellent. Okay. So we're going to go over exports on reporting and analytics. Very quick glance. We're just going to go over what the exports are and what they do, how to run them, and then what the export log is to assist you in troubleshooting when the customer or the third party do not receive their exports. So what are the exports? They're transactional information collected from the point of sale, and then they create an export file and then get it sent to a third party. So for example, the Simphony from CAPS, it sends its transactional information to the cloud, and then in the cloud, they take that information, create an export, and send it to a third party. Some third parties include Avero, Compete, which sometimes falls under R365, AccuBar, etc. So they send that information to these third parties. These third parties upload their info and present it to the customer, through a website or something along those lines. And this is an example of some output that an export would be sending to a third party. So they have some headers over here and some financial information. We don't need to know 100% what this is because most of the time we don't see these, but I'll get into how we troubleshoot and how we can effectively use an example that they may send us, and we'll get there. Some quick reasons as to why we would need to rerun the exports is when Oracle might be down, whether scheduled or unscheduled, because then if the Oracle server is down, like MTU3 is down, the exports will not get sent. We will have to resend it once it comes back up. If the file received by the third party, there's, some corrupted info, like it's missing some headers or it's empty, then we can recreate the file, send it over to them, then they re-upload it again and it works. And let's see, location offline. So as I was mentioning before, if you have an enterprise with 5 locations and one of those locations was having some networking issues and it couldn't send its info from CAPS to the Oracle cloud, it's not going to be able to export info to those third parties. So we might possibly have to recreate the export once it receives all that transactional info. And also the third party themselves on their end could be having a problem if they, switch a port number, they don't tell us, because Oracle has everything set up where it's looking maybe at a specific port or a specific destination, and maybe they change it. If Oracle's not made aware of it, it's not going to send to the proper place, and that port, if it's not the right port, they won't receive it either. So I've had to open up calls for that. They fix it, then they get their exports again. And this is a URL which tells you a little bit about, there we go, a little bit about the exports. Let's see here. So how to get there, right? You log into reporting and analytics, MTU, 1, 3, 5, etc. And you navigate to configuration and export maintenance. And I'll have a demo after this just so we can have a quick little view of it in action. So it's going to take you to something that looks like this. Up here, I don't know if you see my mouse, but you can choose from a drop down the export that you're looking to recreate. Then it'll tell you here, when you select the date, it's always the same day. It's daily. The exports are daily, so we can't do a date range. Like if, let's say they weren't sending exports for a week, we can't do, let's say, March 14th to March 18th. It has to be March 14th to March 14th. You pick the location or locations, send. March 15th, start date, March 15th, end date, send. Which is a little time consuming, but since the exports are daily, that's how they work. And then location, if it's one location that missed it, if they have groups of locations that have missed it, you can select the group, you can select the enterprise if nobody received exports. So that's what is meant by location name or organizational level. That's in this drop down here. And then you press execute. It's going to give you this prompt right here. And, you press run, export, and then it's going to give you this prompt letting you know, okay, it's saved to this next time slot. And then down here at the bottom, you're going to see this pending list. And then let's say when you press refresh and this goes away, that is safe to assume it's on its way to the third party. Now, we've had times where it gets stuck here in this list. So that would mean that if it's a long time, you log out, you log back in, it's been a few hours, it's still there, then you definitely want to get Oracle involved to let them know, because it could be an issue on their end. So now, if you want to verify that the exports are running, when's the last time they received an export, etc., the export log is very useful. I use it all the time. So you can find it in two spots. You can find it possibly if you're, Micros admin, MC admin, etc. It might be under your reports already. And then if you can't find it, you go to library and it should show up. Because especially since we're micros, we use administrator or configurator users, we should have access to this report. If not, we have to make it available. But that's another tutorial for another day. So now this is an example of what the export log looks like. So you go to edit parameters, you can choose the business date. So just to let you know, yesterday will work because it goes by business date. So you can't select today unless it ran already. And locations, you can choose one or all. And this other selection here, which I'm going to get into, you can specify one export if you want. But so far, if I leave that alone, you'll get all the exports. And in this example, you see compete. And you see Avero right here in the second one, because I can tell by the destination. See to it is on the bottom. So if they're labeled that way and they don't say like compete like the first one does, you can always look at the destination, and that helps. And that is on the export file. As you can see, the file name also doesn't have Avero or see to it. It's just general ledger. But the destination can sometimes help. Oh yeah, so I go into it here where if you go to advanced, you can select a specific export. So if they didn't get compete, but they got everything else, you can select compete. You can do, let's say, a range of 7 days, and you can see when the last time they received their compete export. Sometimes you might have to catch up exports. So let's say it's sending every day, but if it didn't send for a few days, it's going to be stuck from the last time it sent. So you might have to send daily exports until it's caught up to the present day. And so we're going to also go over what each one of these columns mean, because that's pretty helpful. So these are pretty obvious, right? Location, business date, the name of the export. Sometimes it's not so obvious, where that's why I say the destination is a good way to, a next good spot to look at if it's not obvious in the name column. Execution date is when it was created and sent. So you'll notice how I was telling you, right, where if it skipped a few days, you'll see, let's say, the business date of August 24th. But then if you see that the exact date is the 27th, that means that the 24th sent today and it's a few days behind, so you may have to catch it up. Type EOD. So that's mostly what you'll find under type, that if Oracle created it, and typically you only see it for SFTP transfers. Description, it could be sent by email or SFTP. This man init column, manual initialization. So you'll see no, right? Here you see no. So that means that Oracle ran it automatically when they're supposed to. And yes means that we ran it manually. It's manually initialized. So another thing too is the time here, which I made a note, but just to say it verbally, the time here is always UTC time. So Avenue, New York, they're East time, right? So if they ask when the export was sent, we have to, subtract 5 hours from 2:34 p.m. so that we know it was like 10 in the morning, something along those lines. File name, that's how the third party, receives their and identifies their files. So let's say, for example, this 450 here, that's just the number for Avenue. So they decided, okay, anything relating to Avenue is going to be 450, and that's how Compete, Avero, etc. are going to receive it. And this part of the file here is the date. And then finally, destination. If it's an SFTP server, or are we emailing it, that's what you're going to see there. And then sometimes if the third party says that they're not receiving exports, sometimes what the destination weirdly got changed. You'll see some IP address. You might see, MTU5 oracle.com, something like that, which is not correct. It's supposed to be going to, cloud FTP, compete.com. So we would have to create a case with Oracle, ask them to address it. And yeah, so basically, we're very limited to what we can do. So sometimes if something needs to be fixed, we have to create a case with Oracle. There's no way of getting around that. And if, let's say, we're sending the files and it looks like they're being sent and received and they're saying that it's not working, I typically ask them, send me a copy of the file. So when I create a case with Oracle, they can see what happened, right? So if the file name was changed, that means that maybe, let's say they changed Avenue. They put some random number like 999, Avenue's 450. They're not getting exports from Avenue. Why is that? That's because somehow the number got changed, so they'll have to fix it up in Oracle. The destination, what I was mentioning earlier, is that for some reason, if an IP address shows up, or if they, in the back end, if the port got changed, that's something they'd be able to fix. The file itself is missing information. Oracle can tell us if that's the case. I've had it where with Avero, if there's checks that are open for longer than a day, it doesn't upload right on their side. So and they'll say their check header is missing. I can show you an example of what that means. So I already know by doing this a lot that if I go into, RNA and I see the check was closed like 2 days later, I can't recreate the export for you. But if for some reason that check header info isn't showing up at all, but everything's fine, then I need Oracle to help with that. And then attach to Oracle case. So allow me to show you a demo. Okay, so you're probably seeing my desktop right now. So for example, this is what an Avero export looks like, right? We are not 100% expected to be troubleshooting this because we don't have access, but they might tell you that, this stuff is missing, their headers. And then I can send this to Oracle and show it to them, right? Compete has a lot of files. When they say their DSR is missing, that's what they're talking about. They're talking about this. And this is the stuff that they upload from Oracle to their servers. And let me see if I have, yep, okay. So before I start my demo, do you have any questions? Oop, I don't want that. Okay. So as you see, I'm going to the little 3 lines, what they call the hamburger for some reason. Configuration, export, maintenance. I can choose an export. Tau, who I work with a lot, they have a lot of exports. Another thing that happens with Tau specifically, they are notorious for having some exports missing here and there. A lot of exports get sent around the same time, which is between 10, 11 our Eastern time. So sometimes I might have to recreate an export for them just because of the sheer traffic of files being sent out from Oracle. So let's say, you know, compete, then I choose the day, and you always choose the same start and end date. You can specify a location. It's always going to depend on how the installer sets them up, because with Tau, for example, you have the individual sites, and you have regions, and you have the whole enterprise, in this case, Tau Group operating. Then you press execute. It's asking you to confirm. You can get that pop-up like I mentioned. And here it is down here. So it's going to take a few minutes, but when you refresh, it should eventually leave this list. So it might take a second, but we can come back. And if we see that it's not there, it went. So I have it under favorites because I use it a lot. Export log. Not now, please. So if I want to see what Dream LA has been sending for the last 7 days, I can do this, right? So the business date for the 20th, look at this. Typically it's the next day. We like to have it where the exports send a couple of hours after the end of night. This doesn't always get set up this way, but it's preferred if they want to see the previous day's totals the next day at their third party. Because if it's done before the end of day, then they're always going to be a day behind. So for example, the 20th, here's the 26th, this is the execution date. So we'd have to catch this up, for example, if they're saying, I haven't seen totals since the 21st, now you know why. And at least here, you know, this is labeled. But let's say see to it is not labeled, says standard general ledger. They're saying they're not getting their see to it. I can run this report and I can use the destination to help me find which one it is. Then I can go back here and, you know, and recreate it. See if this is still there. Sometimes it takes long, but that's about it. The only other thing I could tell you is if you ever get a request to add an export, what I can tell you is open a case with Oracle. They're going to ask, they're going to give you something like this, the setup export Excel sheet, which I think there's an older version that got pinned to this channel. I have this one, which is newer. And then they're going to expect you to, you know, only fill out certain information, not all of it. because that's up to the third party to send, let's say, the rest of this. But, we can help up here, right? Organization name, that would be, let's say if we go to Tau Group Operating is their organizational name. Tau is the 3-letter company code, the short name, otherwise. Their MTU3, however many locations or all I want to add a new export to. Location names if they're not going to be all of them. The time zone depends on the location, right? Or if they decide on a time zone, if it's multiple places across the country. And end of day, so let's say the latest that one of the locations run their end of days at 6 in the morning Eastern, maybe we want to run the export like at 10 a.m. Eastern. That way everybody gets their information in and they can see yesterday's totals the next day. So I can also send this to the chat because I think we have the older one there. So this is an example that I grabbed from our emails. So I think this is one of the Hilton locations, Magna Hospitality. That's the org name. Their environment, that would be, I think a lot of the Hiltons use US 9, so you'd write that here. And if there's more than one location, you can specify the location. The third party fills out all this stuff here, so we don't worry about it. We ask the third party to fill it, they get it back to us, we give it to Oracle, they take care of it. I think this is an example that they fill it out, like Carver Road. They were setting up an SFTP, so they fill it out, we get it to Oracle. And that's about it, unless there's any questions for me. I'm sorry if I went really fast.
Anybody got any questions?
I'm gonna stop sharing for a second, so let's not like the infinity screen. Okay. Yes.
Yes, I need to get credentials so I can be able to log into RNA.
It's
Oh, yes.
using the site's RNA credentials.
All right. It's always going to depend on the site, but we're trying to put them as we go, right, in a secret server.
Mm-hmm. And be
You
listed
should
as RNA.
exactly. So you should find it in secret server as RNA in, let's say, the customer's folder. Sometimes there's an
Maybe I
enterprise.
misspoke. I need a link for it then.
Good.
So I've never used it.
Good
Okay.
question. I actually, in our help desk chat, I popped all of these in here.
Okay.
So that way, whenever you run into a customer and they ask you for stuff, you can put this in your favorite places and you have it
Is that
ready to
going to
go.
be in Elevate Your Skills or?
Oh no, I have that in the canvas in our MCE help desk.
I can show you that, Brent, but also note that under the notes section in the secret server, the URL will be listed there as well.
Correct.
Just copy and paste it.
Okay, handy RNA URLs.
Yep, that's
I
it.
see it. Cool. All right.
And
then
I'm sorry.
be noted in the no, it's fine, Janet. It also noted in the secret server under the RNA passwords under the notes section. We'll have the URL, the company code, and that sort of thing listed there.
And also, if you happen to know their company code, sometimes you can search the company code and it'll, in the secret server, it'll lead you to that entry. Sometimes that helps because the enterprise name might be something completely different than what the property has.
Anybody else got any other questions?
No, that was pretty straightforward in terms of the exports.
Excellent. And then I'll pop in that PowerPoint in the channel too, so that way you guys have it.
That would be awesome, Janet. I appreciate you taking the time and to go over the RNA exports with everyone.
Thank you.
Very informative. So hopefully everybody now has a better understanding of how those exports work.
Yeah, and if anything, just you know where to find me on Slack.
Alrighty, I'll go ahead and I'll end this recording for today's training. Again, thank you so much, Janet.
Thank you.